All right, testing, take one. Whew, hopefully I get this right. I've got to add some emotion. So when I started this project, the idea was to do something that no one else was doing, to bring back some love to a very special time in motorsport history and a very special engine used all around the world. But the goal was to do it in a way that is achievable to any enthusiast without spending a ton of money, but still getting a very good result. A result that is obtainable, and not just to throw a bunch of money at something, build or develop something and have no real pride in it. Create something that's difficult, a challenge, but yet still obtainable. This is the story of my M42/M44 Frankenstein build. All the trials, all the challenges I faced building this engine, and all the pride and the happiness I gained throughout the whole process. Please join me on this magnificent journey. It's going to be a technical one. I hope you enjoy it. Alright, so as I take you through the story, please excuse there's a bit of background noise. That is the wind blowing outside the workshop, so I apologize if that comes through on the microphone. This story is going to follow various different steps of the whole build process. So stick around as we jump into step one. So initially I used Facebook Marketplace and I've got a donor engine. This engine was the actual M44 engine because the M42s were really difficult to find. And at that stage, I just thought, okay, well, we're going to try a very basic, mild, upgraded M44 and throw it in. Little did I know. Behold, ladies and gentlemen, the mighty BMW M44 B19. This came out in the E36 318IS and 318i. The predecessor was the M42 B19, which was a very similar engine, just with some different internals and what, but it's very difficult to find those engines now, considering that this is pretty much a 30-year-old engine. So I am going to see what I can do with this engine. Why do I have this engine? Well, because I like tinkering, and I thought we would do a bit of a throwback to the 90s touring cars. Some of them ran these engines, obviously a very modified version of these engines. So I'm not going to recreate a touring car engine because that would cost unhuman-like money. So what we're going to do, and what we're going to do is I'm going to pretty much strip this thing down. That's the goal for today. Strip it down. I want to see what condition the head is in, and I want to see what condition the bore is in, the pistons are in. I don't think we'll strip the bottom end, but I would like to measure the compression ratio if I can still do that this evening, and just see what we got to work with here. What are we going to do? Well, I'm going to do a very similar upgrade to what I did on the M52 B28, only I'm not going to change the displacement on this engine. It's going to remain a 1.9 litre. We are just purely going to see what we can do to bump up the power and then race it and see how it performs, because apparently they are very good engines, and it's got no VVT or Vanos or anything like that. It is old school, so double overhead cam, 16 valve, 1.9 litres. So we're a bit limited on displacement, but we should still be able to get some fair ponies out of it. So let's see. So first things first, I need to get this thing onto the engine stand and then start stripping away. And I've got some cool innovation, some cool ideas we're going to play with. Probably going to look at changing the intake manifold, a different intake manifold, not this one. This one is a variable length type thing, and these runners are just too short, and they're also different lengths, so it's not going to really work in a performance application. So we're going to can that. We're also going to can the exhaust manifold. It's a good header, but I think the tubes are the the diameter of the headers are just, the primaries are too small. So we'll have to redo that, but yeah, let's get this thing on the engine stand and start stripping. Alright, so I have my boxes ready to gather the parts. I like to kind of group them by cylinder head, intake manifold, and I also have a whole bunch of bags for bagging and tagging. I know it's a bit tedious, but it's really the best way to make sure you know exactly where the bolts go. Otherwise it's a bit of a juggling act. So first things first, what I'm going to do is take off this intake manifold. Yay! Alright, so I don't want to fiddle with this thing too much. I want to get this thing off. Ah, there we go. Ah, there's one more. Right where the fuel line is. These 90s engines are honest engines. I mean, look at this massive harness. Going to rejuvenate this engine. None of this PCV crap we're going to use again. So I think I've pretty much taken off everything. Yes, it was the fuel line and a bunch of sensors. Wow, that is a very special intake manifold. Fuel in here smells very old. What? Holy smokes. There's something in the intake port. Huh? It looks like a valve guide. What? Okay, well, let's extract what that is. I don't know how long that has been in there. There's some sort of bush. It could have just fallen out now. It could also be a dowel that fits on here. I don't know. That looks like that has been in there for a long time. Wow, they are so lucky. Didn't chew this engine up. Full of oil. Disgusting. This is a nice valve cover. Okay, so we can expect that this ball will be pretty worn out. This head looks like it's done some miles. I don't know the mileage in this car. This cam's got a fair amount of wear on it. That's nice. A free socket. Wow. Double overhead cam, 16 valve timing chain system. We're getting a new chain. We'll keep the guides. So what I must do now, turn it over to TDC and then start dismantling. Wow, look at the state of these. There should be a mark here somewhere. No mark. TDC. Looks like it is this tooth after the gap, lined up with the front of the pulley. That's what it looks like. Okay, we're forging apart the head. I've taken out all the nuts. I'm just charging that battery intermittently. That's the cam box cover. Looks good, apart from the fact that it's filthy. Okay, so we have to pull the sump off to lock the crank, because we have to pull the front cover off. There we go. That's a cool sump. Rods all look good. Oil squirters. There we go. Not a bad weight pulley. Not even that heavy. Crank looks good. That is good news. Firm favorite of a 4-cylinder. Well, I'm excited about this one. cover comes off nicely. So the objective of all of that was to get this timing chain off. So let's do that. On that. Why am I taking the camshaft out? Because we need to get to the head bolts. We'll start from the outside. Let's pull this head off. We've come so far. Please let there be no more. There we go. Okay. Ah, that's a heavy head. Lux. Ah, running well. Ah, that's good news. But look at the carbon buildup. You can still see the cross hatches. There's no massive lip. That's actually in brilliant shape. The head looks good as well. This is exciting news because what that means is we can potentially get some good gains out of this head. It looks pretty fresh. The bore looks fresh. So thankfully not too much engineering work to do. But we'll have to just measure it all up and see where we get to. So from here, tomorrow, I'm going to send this head off for engineering and we're going to start the process. Unfortunately, because of time constraints, I won't be able to do the porting myself. So I am going to phone a friend on that. But having said that, these ports look phenomenal. They look really good to make, good for making power. So it shouldn't take too much work. Actually, I'll look at the exhaust ports, see what that looks like. Anyway, that's going to be it for tonight. Let me get this thing wrapped up so we can send it tomorrow. Alright, so I'm on my way to fetch a Dyno engine. I found a really cheap one, a really shitty one. The idea is that I'm going to put the Dyno engine in the car so we can can send the car for its intake manifold and exhaust manifold fabrication, so tying into the rest of the exhaust, because it's just to save time really. So managed to find this engine. It's pretty nasty, but it doesn't matter. We're going to use it just for mock-up purposes, and so I can get the stuff made at the same time as I'm waiting for bits from engineering, because if I have to wait for all that stuff to come back, then we're just not going to have any time at the end. So these are the things you have to do if you want to expedite short-term projects like this. Piece of scrap engine that was lying in the back of someone's yard in a shed. It was like in the sand, lying flat down, just a really old beat up engine. And I got that engine for the purposes of installing it in the car so that we could carry on with the intake manifold as well as the exhaust manifold while I was building the actual race engine. This was so that we could do two things at once. I got the engine for really cheap. When I had got the engine and put it into the car, that scrap engine, I found out that it was actually an M42 engine that had bent valves, that something had broken on the oil filter housing, that pulley, it bent valves. But it was the right cylinder head. Now the difference is the M44 has little rockers and the M42 still has a cam bucket system. With hydraulic lifters, but the M42 head is the better head because you can get away with a much better cam profile and you can go to a solid lifter setup. So I made a quick decision. We pulled off the M42 head and sent it off to the engineering shop, the guy that's doing my cylinder heads, and he brought me back the old M44. We put that in for the exhaust and the intake. So I got real lucky with that, and that is why we were able to do what we did to this motor. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually hone the block, just a very, very light hone. Get it ready for assembly, pre-assembly. We have this hone and we're going to set it to its lightest setting on the spring preload, and we're just going to give it 5 strokes, and that's all. Before you can still see the cross hatching. Now it is just a bit dirty from the chemical clean process, but what we'll do is you'll see how it'll come out now that we give it a clean. 1, 3, 4, 5. So what we're going to do now is we are going to measure the cc's of the head and the block and everything, just to try and get the compression ratio on this 4-cylinder. It should be quite big. So what we do is we put a little grease around the top here. I've already greased the rings, so used grease on the piston rings. That's to create a seal. So that the paraffin doesn't run down. So we're using paraffin, and obviously you just want to get everything out so you get a consistent reading. I've dropped the piston down 4 millimeters. So now we take our plate, get it in such a way that it will seal and not let the paraffin out. So that's not going to work because the block is going downhill. So we want the air bubble to come to the top. Filler plate is at the top because this block is angled down on the engine stand, so it's important the bubbles at the top so the air can travel to the top. Alright, so now we take our burette, it's full, it's on 0, and then we fill. So we got 17.6 milliliters. What I need to do now is just take this out obviously, and now we need to measure the head, and then from there we will be able to punch it in that calculator. You can find the link here somewhere, and then we can see what the compression ratio is. What we're going to do is we're going to do the volume in the head quickly. So again, I'm just putting some grease around the edge, and then we don't want the grease to affect the volumes, so we clear off anything inside the combustion chamber. And just make sure the combustion chamber is clean, and obviously you have your spark plug in. Sometimes what we do is we put grease on the intake valves and the exhaust valve seats. This head has literally just been done, so it should be fine. After pre-assembly, I measured the compression ratio, and I got to about 11.8 to 1. And I wasn't that happy with it. I really wanted a bit more. We also had a bit of a catch-22 where I had to now machine the pistons more for the clearancing because of the high lift cam, as well as the modified piston, and all of the good stuff. So the compression ratio I eventually got to during trial assembly was not the final compression ratio we eventually got to after I had machined the pistons. So this was one of the most challenging parts of this whole build. Those pistons are not from that engine. Those pistons are from the M50 B25. That is the 325i M50 engine. So I did a custom, I gave the design, I made up a drawing, gave the drawing to the machine shop to machine the pistons. And in this process, you have to take it very incrementally. So in other words, you machine away what you kind of figure out it should be. You do the trial assembly, you put it together, turn it over, make sure it doesn't touch, do the clearances with the press stick, then strip it. And upon doing so, obviously we found that there was no clearance. So the pistons went through 3 rounds of machining before I was happy with the clearance we got. And it's not something you can take big bites out of. You have to take it very slow. It's a slow and tedious process. because you can always take away, but you can never put back. And that's why it took so long. We were super held up with that. Okay, so we've done the clearances. We've assembled it, turned it over, advanced the cam, retarded the cam. Now let's see where we are. Looks like the exhaust valves are much closer than the intake valves. So we just cut this press stick in half. We take this piece out. No touching on the sides, no touching on that side. Looks good. Now let's see the exhaust, because the exhaust was looking super close. Oh man, that looks close. Right there, it's touching. So we're good on the intake, no good on the exhaust. On the intake, it's fine. We've got, you can see, a nice 2 millimeter step there. Works well. It's what we're looking for, about a 2 millimeter step. But on the exhaust, you can see there is nothing. In fact, it even looks like it's touching a bit over there on the step. And on this side, there is also nothing. The car also then came back from the exhaust and intake fabrication. Alright, so I have all the con rods, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I am ready to log all of the weights. I'm going to measure them and basically balance the con rod in terms of its small end weight versus big end weight. So I have also installed the ARP conrod bolts, ARP 2000 conrod bolts, and from here we're just going to balance them. Alright, so I've changed my measuring strategy. I am basically suspending it like that and recording it because I was getting inconsistent readings, so let's go. Alright, so I have lightened, balanced all the bottom ends to be exactly the same, as well as the top end. I've also deburred the hole, the oil feed hole to the bottom of the piston, so they all weigh 546 in total, and then the small ends are all exactly the same. I think it's 161 that I made them. So yep, pretty happy with that. It's a good result for a DIY job. To remove the weight, I used the soft pad on the grinder, and then to deburr the hole, I just used the deburring tool. So, conrod's done. Alright, so we are officially starting assembly, and just gonna clean up here. Cleaned all the bearings, cleaned the pedestals, cleaned the block, blown it through. I actually need to install the oil squirters first. Let's do that. Oil squirters going in, number 1. So it looks like they go more or less 90 degrees with the crank. Alright, time for the bearings. Let's do it. Number 1 main bearing. Number 2 main bearing. Number 3 main bearing. Cleaned this so many times. Number 4 main bearing with the thrust washer. Number 5 main bearing. Assembly lube. It's time. Now I've already blown out all the galleries. Time for the crank to go in. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, here we go. Let's put these pedestals in. Start with the middle one. Tab's always on the same side, and what you must do is line up the bolts, make sure it's nice in the center, and then it should go in nice and easily. Good. Always make sure you know which one is one. So the manual calls for 20 degrees, but because this is a race car, I'm going to do it on 30. It's not much. Oh yes, the crank must spin freely. There is end thrust. Now we can do the rods and pistons. Now we put the piston onto the conrod. So this requires lots of lube. On the piston, on the gudgeon pin, on the conrod. So check the orientation. That's the front towards me. Orientation on the piston. That's the front. More lube. So when I do this, I always put the piston in a vise and then start installing from the bottom up. I put the oil ring in first, the main oil ring, and it doesn't really matter where you start, but you always clock at 90 degrees from each other. So the ring gaps must be 90 degrees from each other. The reason for that is so that the oil doesn't pass through. So that one is there, so I'm going to put this one, the bottom one, underneath 90 degrees, and then this one 180 degrees from the bottom one. So this ring will go like this. Come on, this one's being difficult. The exact orientation is not 100% necessary because the rings do move, but it's important that they are clocked 90 degrees. This one is the second ring, or the middle ring. It's got a marker for top, so that one we put there. We'll put this one 90 degrees from that. Now this is quite a brittle ring, so just have to be a bit careful not to break it. And then the top ring. Sometimes the top rings or the second ring have little scrapers on. If it has a little scraper, it must face down to scrape the oil down. And the top ring 90 degrees from the second ring. And there we go. Alright, so we've put the rings on. What we're going to do now, put lube on the bearing, put lube on the conrod bolts, because these are ARP 2000 conrod bolts. Put lube in the bore, put the ring screws together and get the sucker in. So let's do that. So we'll use the red line assembly lube on the big end bearings. We'll just leave that there like that. Then we use just conventional engine oil on the bore and the cylinder walls. Now, interestingly enough, something a lot of people don't know is when you look at a block from in the rotational direction, the piston's going up like that, the crank is moving this way. This plane in the direction of the crank is called the thrust. This plane, 90 degrees to the crank rotation, is called the bore. So a lot of people just call it the bore, but yeah, different terminology, because the piston pushes up and the cotton rod pushes the piston skirt into the wall. Therefore, it thrusts the piston into the wall. So we'll just lube this puppy up nicely, and then we need ARP lube for the bolts. So I've got a little bit left here in this lube container jobby of mine. So we put ARP assembly, I had a little bit here, there we go. So we put ARP assembly lube on the thread, don't need a whole lot, just enough, and on under the head of the bolt. Okay, so that is prepped and ready. So now we've got oil in the bore, oil, assembly lube on the bearing. We have our ring squeeze. So now let's put a bit of lube on this. We'll get when the piston goes on. This is just normal engine oil. Then you take your piston, make sure the orientation is right, and you lube this sucker up with just conventional engine oil, specifically around the rings. Okay, so we've squeezed our piston and our rings. Make sure the ring squeeze is nice and flat on the block. If you feel any resistance in that process, stop. It means one of the rings has popped out. So that's in nice and sweet. Now we're going to tighten it up. So now we take the bottom end of the bearing, put some lube on it. Now a lot of people just use engine oil. I like to use assembly lube because it helps protect the bearings during startup, especially if the engine is going to stand for a long time. Okay, so that's done. ARP rod bolts with lube on. Make sure the orientation is correct. It is. There we go. Now we torque them. I must look up the torque specs. 36 foot-pounds. 48, sure. That's pretty serious. Alright, so the socket I have doesn't work. It works just to get them on, but it's not actually the right socket. You need a multi-hex for this bolt. So what we're going to do, we're going to put it all together. Just make sure it turns over properly. And then we are going to look at getting the rest, a lot of it buttoned up so we can get the head on. So I'll have to go and buy a socket for this, but we're going to carry on so long. Alright, so we're going to do cylinders 4 and then 2 and 3 together. Yes. Alright, so I'm here alone. There's no one else here. I need to get this thing done right now. It's a different night, obviously, to when we did the bottom end. So now I'm going to start with the front end. I need to get the front end on. I'm going to assemble this oil pump and then just smash it. Try and get as much done as I can. Alright, oil pump assembled. Now to get the gasket set, pull off that, clean that block, get it on. Old trusty iPhone. Just trying to get the oil off. Don't want to wash this lube away by the #1 main bearing, but need to get all the oil off. So I got an Erling base bottom end sub-assembly gasket set. It obviously comes with the rear main, the front main seal, oil pump, bunch of O-rings. This is the sump. Here's the front cover gasket, rear gasket, whatever that is, another whatever that is. So, oh yeah, it's for the back here. A lot of freaking gaskets. So I need to get all of that on, and we'll tackle that later. Let's go. Alright, front cover is on. Torqued all the bolts. I'm going to get busy with the timing chain, which means we've got to get this gasket on here, and then it's pretty much ready for the head. Alright, so head gasket is on, ready to go. I have all the bolts lubed up, ARP assembly lube. I'm ready to put the head on, but unfortunately I did not bring my other camera or a tripod, so I'm filming on my phone, so you can't see it. Actually, I'll try and put it up against the toolbox, then you can see it. Let's record. Now I'm trying to get this. There we go. Ooh. Man, this is a heavy cylinder. Bada bing, bada boom. Alright. Alright, so timing chain is on. The cams are set from the last time I did the cam timing. I'm going to go over that again, but it is time to put a brand new timing chain tensioner on here. So I'm going to use the existing cap, and then it is a brand new timing chain tensioner. So I've gone and gotten a whole bunch of new stuff. Pretty much everything going through this engine is new. So we're just gonna keep moving. Alright, so we have TDC, and now we're ready to set. Alright, intake cam done. The supplier recommended 108 degrees max lift, so 108 degrees before top dead center max lift. So if you do that, 316 minus 108 is 252. So we're setting on 252 there, and that is pretty much max lift over there. So I'm going to do the exhaust. That is 108 after top dead center, and then we are done with the cam timing. So from there I just jump onto the rest of it. So the front cover, water pump, thermostat, and then really it's just buttoning the rest of the stuff up. So yeah, just keep going. Alright, she's all wrapped up for the evening. I'm pretty pooped. I've got to work tomorrow, so we'll come back and attack this thing some more. Still quite a few things to do, but nothing left but to do it. So I'm gonna come back early in the morning on Saturday. Man, we were just held up so much by the Pistons, so yep, just gotta push, let's see. Alright, so we're gonna torque the sump now. We're going to torque the conrod bolts, and I've lost my torque wrench. Here we go. Conrod still moves freely on the crank, so we're good there. Like a glove, let's just turn it so that number one is facing up. There we go. Alright, so this is our sump, which has been modified, obviously to accommodate oil surge. And a guy from Speed Spot in Pretoria, a guy named Throttle, did such a fantastic job on this for us. So first thing he did is he put this little round tube in, and the reason he put that in is for the oil pickup to mount and to sit in. This is so that it provides more of a secure place to pick up the oil. Alright, so there it is with the pickup installed. Now this kind of work takes so much forward thinking and planning. Here you can see that he allowed a cutout in this tube for this little mounting bracket to go through. And yeah, that is brilliant forward thinking and just so well fabricated. So the next piece that comes on, he welded in this angle iron and put captive nuts in over here, so that we can install this baffle plate. Now this baffle plate is to assist with some more oil surge, and I kind of copied a design from the M42, which worked very well. And this sump had nothing more than what do you call it? A windage tray, which you will see shortly. So that goes in there like that. So we have the round tube. We also have this baffle to kind of stop the sloshing, and then the pickup. And then on top of that, what we install is this puppy. This is the windage tray. So this is a stock item. This is also magnesium. That's why it's discolored the way it has. But that is pretty amazing considering we've managed to get all of this in this package. And I just have to say a massive shout out to Throttle at Speed Spot in Pretoria North. It's like the other side of Pretoria. But really amazing fab work. He also did the intake manifold for me, where he cut the stock manifold. The intake manifold is obviously the throttle bodies and all of that, so the adapter, I'll show you that, what he did there. But brilliant fabrication, aluminium work. So well done, thank you so much, Carl. I'm gonna get this puppy stuck into the block so we can get this engine in the car today. Look at this beautiful white valve cover. I've welded on a AN fitting here, and that is going to go to the breather in the car. But just look at it, the pièce de résistance. Okay, so up next, the cylinder head has been ported, and so what I need to do is I need to match port the intake manifold. So what has happened is we cut the original manifold off and welded on this. This is Carl, obviously, welded on this adapter plate, which then bolts to the throttle bodies. So that is giving us a couple of challenges. First of all, I need to port match all of the ports to the cylinder head. It doesn't, the cylinder head's a bit bigger. Then we have a challenge here where the water port coming out the engine over here needs to clear this, so I need to cut that off. Then there is another challenge with the oil cooler hat that we're going to run. I'm going to show you that, but basically we're going to have to modify it here somehow to make that work. So first things first, I'm going to have to port match these. I don't have engineering blue, so I won't be able to see what the difference is, but I've got a plan. Okay, so I've put red rubber grease on. Should probably put some bolts on, and then I'll pull it off and show you. So there you can see the difference. Effectively, here where this thick line is on the grease, that's where I need to
machine it out too. So it's quite a difference on all of them. Not so much at the bottom, but pretty much everywhere around it needs to be opened up. I ended up doing was installing the gasket between the intake and the cylinder head, and then port matching the gasket to the head. Right, I obviously filled up each one of these ports, and I'm going to vacuum it out now. So what that allows me to do is take that and transfer it to this manifold, and then I should be able to get it right, because I did port match it according to the grease, but it didn't line up so nicely. So not sure what happened, but doesn't matter. This should give us a good base, and then we can get it done from there. Alright, so I have taken it off there, overlaid it on the manifold. I used a marker to outline the overlap. There we go. So that's everywhere. I need to open it up. It's quite a bit over there. I already started, but it was catching the gasket, but you can see how much it needs to come out. Quite a lot over here. Super interesting. That's better. Trying to get the light so we can see it. So one of the challenges I was having was that these existing grommets, or the old grommets, were so hard when I took fasteners out that hold the valve cover down. So I had to cut them off with the side cover, and then I couldn't get the new grommets on. So I ended up using some oil, and then I used a nut with the washer in a vise to screw in the hold down bolts. Now this proved to be very effective. I tried to smack them in with a socket, tube socket. It just ended up messing up the washers. Alright, so it's another day, and we've had multiple nights. We've been busy on this. We haven't recorded everything, but one of the things that hold us up is that almost every single bolt holding or the thread holding the valve cover onto the cylinder head was stripped, and we had to get pretty much each one helicoiled again. Also, the water housing that holds the thermostat with the pipes that come out for the radiator, all of those bolts were stripped as well. So I had to get that helicoiled. So big job for today, well, just one of the jobs, is to get all the valve cover bolts back on and not strip them. The torque spec is somewhere between 8 and 12 Newton meters on the cylinder head. So really, when you're doing these bolts, just make sure you don't over tighten them, because they come up to basically a hard stop, and that's really, the valve cover seals up against this rubber. I showed you how to install that rubber. This bolt basically just locks inside the head, so do not over tighten. Okay, so it's about 9 Newton meters. So tightening it up. Tighten up. So it's 9 Newton meters, about 6 to 7 foot-pounds of torque. And you can feel it. Oh, just had these threads redone. So there we go. And you start from the inside out, same as a head gasket, just to get all of the any sort of imperfections, I guess. It ripples out. You push the ripples out. Now there's one that the guys didn't do, which they'll have to come back and fix. So that's always the case. You're going to be left with one. There we go. Okay. so much space for activities. Woo! Wow. Still quite a bit of work to do, but she's in. Then I can put the gearbox in. But she's in.
Alright, so one of the last tasks I need to do is the accelerator cable. Now I've got this very nice kit from efihardware.com, and it comes with a cable and connectors and everything for a 20 valve Toyota motor where for the throttle bodies. But I'm not going to use all of it. I'm just going to use a couple of bits from it. Reason being, we have this wall mount fitting that goes into the firewall, and I need to retain that. I'm going to use this fitting here from EFI Hardware, but most of all, down in the footwell, the accelerator cable on the end has this clip that needs to clip into this fitting that needs to fit into the pedal. So I'm going to use the old cable, the original cable from this car, and just modify it so that we'll trim it shorter so that it fits basically with the length and onto this this linkage system, and we can get a good setup going. So I'm going to kind of use a bunch of bits from the kit and the original cable. Alright, so there are two things we are going to do now. We're at the point where I can crank for oil pressure, so super exciting time. So you take all of the plugs out, so you see the coils are out, the plugs are out. Other thing you do to crank for oil pressure, disconnect the injector plugs so it doesn't prime the injectors. The other thing I'm going to do is check the fuel system for any leaks. There's quite a few new fittings, so what I'll do is switch the ignition on and switch the fuel pump on and just keep an eye out for any leaks. There's definitely fuel in the system, no leaks, so that's good. The time has come again, so it is that red light. We need to go off. So let me crank it from this side. No issues, nothing. Oh, come on. Okay, let's try again. It's got to pump through everything, and there is oil. Come on, show me something. Oil level has dropped a bit, so there's definitely something happening. What? Bit of a crisis. I'm not getting oil pressure. I'm not even filling up the oil pressure housing. So before I dig too deep, I am gonna take off this oil filter housing bracket so we can see what is happening there. Then maybe crank it with the bracket off. If oil comes flying out of the gallery, then we know that there's a blockage in this bracket. But if there's no oil pumping up from the oil pump, then there's something going on with the oil pump or the scavenge or something. So we'll start problem solving here. Alright, oil pressure check number 42 or whatever it is. I can't say if oil came out. Doesn't look like it though. Oh, that's a problem. So unfortunately, this is what it's come to. Sad state of affairs. First pulled the sump off, try to figure out what's going. There's a good seal here where it needs to seal. Pulled everything off to get to the oil pump, stripped the oil pump. The oil pump looks fine. So I don't actually know what is going on here. Something very strange, and it is not supplying oil. So the only thing I can think of is that somehow there's a vacuum on the scavenge line where it's picking up air through here, through the scavenge tube. So we'll have to check that out tomorrow. But yeah, it's a big setback. All right, it's another day. I have contemplated my life choices, regrouped, and come up with a strategy. So what I'm going to do is I am going to do a bench test. Now I've stripped everything, the oil pump, everything, and I can't really find anything wrong with the system. So what I want to do is I want to basically pre-assemble everything, and you know, with the tube and everything, I'll have to clean it all first, assemble the oil pump and bolt it onto the sump like it is in the car, and then basically spin the pump over here and try and get it to pump oil over here. And if it does, then at least I know it is moving oil, because it wasn't moving oil in the car. There's a couple of things that could have happened. It's possible that the pump needs to be primed. Now I did use assembly lube, but it is possible that it just didn't have enough, let's say, hydraulic, I don't know, displacement, or it can't pull enough vacuum in the system to actually suck the oil out. Doesn't really make sense to me, but based on what I've read, that is a possibility. So first things first, we're going to use some amazing Ravenol brake cleaner, and we are going to clean everything and then pre-assemble it. And I'm going to spare you all the cleaning and everything, but I'm going to pre-assemble it, and then we'll do the test and see. So we'll catch you there. So over here, like a chump, I didn't record on something with the audio, and so therefore we don't have audio. So yeah, I'm just talking about how I'm going to basically prime the oil pump using this Ravenol oil and make sure that there's plenty oil to get everything lubricated, because I did it previously with the assembly lube and I think that was the problem in the end. So I just lubed up the gears to make sure that everything had oil on it and there wasn't going to be any metal on metal rubbing. So much background noise. And then also lube the outer gear and just make sure that the orientation is correct of the gear. There's that dot and dot, and you just kind of make sure they're both facing up, and then just lubricate again. So I wanted to not create any hydraulic locks on that face, just make sure that there's plenty of oil inside the gears. So then I just went ahead and tightened up all the bolts. Obviously I used Loctite and torqued them to 10 Newton meters. So here I'm just talking about how I've set up the rig. We are just going to use everything without the baffles and basically put in this system that I'm going to use the impact wrench on, and as well as try and feed everything through. So I put about 5 liters of just general mineral oil in, just so that we could see. I spun it over and I wasn't getting anything. I was just trying to figure out the whole system, and eventually I figured out that you will see just now, yeah, I figured out that I needed to close the oil filter, one of the holes on the oil filter housing side, so that we could actually pick up a vacuum, because here it was just not scavenging properly. So there you could see me start to fiddle with the holes, and then I figured, okay, I need to tape it up. So that's what I did. I taped up one of the holes and saw that, okay, if you do that, you get pressure. Oh my word, I'm such a bonehead. I didn't have the receiver recording. So basically I'm putting this oil filter housing on to isolate the pressure relief valve. Well, we isolated the pressure relief valve. I'm now putting on the oil filter housing to see if we can fill it up. Okay, let's go. There we go. Yes! Yes! We've got oil pressure! Woo! All right, let's see. Let's see, boys. Hey! Yes, boy. Fucking pissed oil everywhere, but it's done. We got oil pressure. Bada bing, bada boom. So I am really stoked because we managed to get oil pressure. Now, I don't actually know what was going on because I thought the pressure relief valve was possibly bleeding, but I don't know because this is the state it was in when it was in the car. So without the oil filter housing on, I couldn't pump because it was bleeding off through the outside of the housing. But once I put the housing on it, before I put the housing on, I isolated it with tape. I got the oil. I put the housing on. We filled up the housing. I got oil pressure. So I don't actually know. I think it possibly just needed to have oil on the gears. That's the only thing I can think of. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. But either way, at least it is working now. There's nothing actually wrong with the system. And that's what I thought. I suspected that there was nothing, like no smoking gun or anything. So the contraption works. At least we got oil. So wow, it is Monday night. In 10 days time we're racing this car. So I'm also moving house this week. It's absolute chaos. Moving house this week. Wednesday is South African National Voting Day. It's freaking madness. So the goal was to have this thing on the dyno today. Obviously that didn't happen. From here I just got to assemble it, get it all together so we can get it to the dyno hopefully by Friday, because Wednesday is a bit of a write-off. Maybe even Thursday. Let's just see how we get on. So I'm going to strip this. I'm not going to show you all of that detail, but hopefully I can get some footage of when we do the first startup and a couple of runs on the dyno. Obviously we have to check heat and all of that stuff. So, but the good news is we have oil pressure. We can send some oil through the engine. Whew. Let's push forward. Yes. Yes. Right, we're going to start fiddling, trying to get closer to first startup. We're here at Miller Developments. So everything's ready. Clutch is bled. Not sure we'll get on the dyno today, but
computer was going into a protection mode, seeing that the coolant was getting too hot.
I am super excited to announce that we have Ravenol as a key sponsor with us on the SSBB YouTube channel and part of our journey. They have sponsored me a whole bunch of product that I will be using on the race car. We have a 10W60 full racing oil. This is a full synthetic race oil. Next we have a fully synthetic gear oil. This is also for a limited slip differential, so we will be using this in the gearbox and in the differential. Next up, we're going to be using their RS325 Plus brake fluid. This is a high temperature racing brake fluid. Alright, so this engine, this M44 B19, M42, M44 Frankenstein B19 takes a full 5 liters of oil, so we're just going to dump this 5 liters, this 1060 racing oil straight in. Again, thank you to Ravenol for supporting us and supporting the channel. I'm super excited to work with them, and let's see. Oh yeah, nice deep golden. Welcome to beautiful Cape Town. We are here for the BMW Club Cape Town event, our one coastal event for the year. I'm here at Gotch and Cooper, and Mark Fontini's got my car on the dyno. So first things first, we're going to make sure all of the AFRs are good on this brand new M44, and we're going to see what kind of power it makes on his dyno here in Cape Town. So that's at the coast. Guys, we are here. It's the Friday practice. Everybody's getting ready. A lot of activity. I've just done documentation. That's my transponder. That's for timing. So that'll pick up what kind of lap times I do. The car felt good yesterday. I did a first test with it. From here, I need to take the car to go do soutineering. Then my first practice is going to be around 11 o'clock. So I'm going to take it now, do soutineering, and then bring it back, make sure everything's good. So something I did yesterday was this. I just closed this hole up. I forgot the plastic cover at home in Johannesburg or Pretoria. So I just closed this up to try and make the cooling system a bit more efficient. Also, what I've done is I've added a flat floor at the front of the car. Tiny pinhole in the radiator, so I see I have two now. There's one there, one there. So I need to get that sorted, but I've used a bit of, we call it Practically steel. It's like a bonding agent that you use that you can use it for whatever. So that kind of closed that hole. And from here I'm just going to clean up, wipe up some of the oil. Power steering doesn't seem to be leaking, everything's good. I've added lock wire, oil filter, lock wire on the sump, lock wire on the diff plugs. It's mandatory here in South Africa. Also what they want here in Cape Town, the scrutineers like to see a spring on your dipstick to try to basically keep that from falling off. They might ask for a lock wire tab here. So now, because of the rain, it's just about staying on the track, finding the grip levels, don't push too hard. Learn. Oh, this rain is terrible.
If you want to see some more of this kind of content, please consider subscribing. Just click on the subscribe button, hit the bell, and you're good to go.
Right, I'm just standing here out of the wind. So I went out first session for me, first practice session, and it was all dry as soon as I got to the pit exit and it started bucketing down. So the car felt good though. It was super wet and slippery. Had a few little moments. One of the guys in front of me had a big moment. So what I've done is just kind of topped up with fuels. We're going to see, it looks like it's going to be dry for the rest of the day. So we're going to go out, try it again. Qualifying is this afternoon, and I've bled the brakes, put that new Ravenol brake fluid in. So super keen to see how it performs. So we'll just take it from here. You want to walk inside as well.
Well, there we go, guys. We blew a head gasket, and I thought it was the thermostat. It still probably could be, so what I did was I took the thermostat out and basically cut it out and just kept the housing in there, and went out in the last session, but the last session was qualifying, but it just overheated straight away. You know, sometimes we have great success and sometimes we get kicked in the teeth with these things, and yeah, unfortunately this is one of those times. It's just a pity it happened here in Cape Town, but this is effectively the first race that I'm doing with the car, so there's a lesson in that, you know, when you've got a new build, maybe don't be so ambitious. It is what it is. I've got to just get the car back home, and then yeah, take the head off, start figuring it all out and whatever. Cape Town was an amazing event. I always love going there, and the atmosphere is great. The people are amazing. So many supporters came out and said hello, so thank you so much. I ended up having a great time. The car was good. It made 208 horsepower, 150 2.6 or something kilowatts on the flywheel. That's amazing. That is really good power for an off-the-shelf type modification build of an M44/42 Frankenstein motor. So what is the specification of this engine? And I thought I'd keep this the best for last because it is something very cool. So like I said, M44 sub-assembly. The M44 bits are the block, the front housing, the crankshaft and the conrods are all M44, as well as the sump. The sump is obviously baffled, as you saw. I'm using ARP conrod bolts, M50 B25 pistons, heavily modified to get the compression ratio up. Eventually got the compression ratio, after it was all said and done, to 12:1. So very happy with that. Cylinder head is an M42 cylinder head with a valve bucket setup, and I'm running a custom grind high lift cam. Now the grind specifications I'm going to keep to myself, but it is a custom grind on the camshaft. It's a reground camshaft, so I went as hot as I could go with the reground camshaft. Then also we ported the cylinder head, mild porting, because you never want to go too big on the ports because it'll mess around with air speeds, volumetric efficiency. Did a valve seat job, did a job on the valve seats, and then we're running a custom intake manifold. Now originally I was going to build a turbo style manifold, but it worked out that the material alone for that project was going to be the same price as going for an ITB setup. So in the end I went for 43mm Toyota throttle bodies with 100mm ram tubes.
The guy who did my sump, Carl, also made the intake manifold for me, so he laser jet cut a plate, an aluminium plate, cut the original intake manifold, made it all work. It was a ton of work. Made little bushes for the injectors. Injectors, I'm using the Bosch 440cc injectors that ran in my 6-cylinder. Coils, I'm using the Audi R8 coils, NGK spark plugs. On the exhaust side, I've built a custom exhaust all the way through. It's my own custom design header. So it's large diameter header, 4x2x1. I always like to run that for a bit of mid-range as well as top end. The lengths in that are all my design. And then a 63mm exhaust from the header all the way back to the car, to the back of the car. It's running the ECU Masters ECU. For fuel, I couldn't run the avgas anymore because the avgas is actually what destroyed my lambda sensor. So for fuel, I run 95 pump fuel. That is all we can get here. It has to be an unleaded fuel. So 95 octane with Ravenol octane booster. On the dyno, worked perfectly in Cape Town. Again, thank you Mark Fontini for helping me with that dyno. Amazing work. And what else is there? The oil cooler setup, I explained that to you. Had to custom make a flange that would fit in between the alternator housing. And a mammoth amount of work. And then run a remote oil filter setup. I tried to run the sandwich plate on top of the original oil filter housing. That just didn't work. Obviously all gaskets are new. The timing chain is new. Original camshaft sprockets. I set the cam timing to what the cam manufacturer recommended. So obviously did the custom cam timing for that. The clutch and flywheel, it's an aluminium flywheel and a special clutch that's running in this car. Something else I didn't tell you is at the dyno, the clutch stopped working. So there are a few little bits that we missed on this build, but for the most part we've captured everything. The gearbox is still the 5-speed 328i gearbox that was in this car, and from there to the back it's all still the same. So very, very happy with that. Like I say, at the coast it made 208 horsepower. So for a little 1.9 litre, it is still a 1.9 litre. It's not even a 2 litre yet. It made 208 horsepower. So very, very happy with that. There's more in it. There's definitely more in it, but I need to see this year through. And next year we might go chase a little more and do some very cool stuff. Sometimes in life we set out on a path to find or obtain something. Often we encounter hurdles which challenge us and slightly change our direction or even our trajectory. We fight these obstacles. Some of them we win, some of them we lose, and some of them we don't even understand. These challenges lead us to growing and becoming more of what we could be. At the time, it's frustrating because we feel like you are held back. We get annoyed because we are not reaching our targets, goals, or aspirations. The most important thing to realize is that the realization of a worthy goal is hard, and it is necessary that it is hard. Nothing good ever comes easy. But when it comes, oh man, when it comes, it is glorious. This is what molds us as people, as community, as family. It's the journey. Thank you for watching.